Chris, a very good evening to you, sir. Is this relevant? Is this important? What's going on?
Well, first of all, Jeremy, I'm a Chelsea supporter.
Oh, Jesus God, honestly. Are you really?
Yeah, my dad played for Chelsea, so I've got to support
Did he?
Chelsea.
What was his name then?
Parry in the 50s, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Barry Parry?
Anyway.
Was he called Barry Parry, did you say?
No. He was called the striker in the mud, but there we go.
Good man. Well, they are great. So now my wife's cheering even more at home, Chris Parry. Well done.
That's right. You support them secretly, I know you do.
No, I don't.
OK, so this sort of thing, we've got to get used to this sort of thing in the Baltic and these disputed regions around Eurasia. We've talked before, Jeremy, about China, Russia, Iran, North Korea being our opponents. They're seeking to dominate not only the continent of Eurasia, but also the waters around it. And we can expect our aircraft and ships to be confronted almost daily, either in the South China Sea or in the Baltic or the Black Sea, and also the aircraft. But I have to say, this used to happen during the Cold War. A number of times when I was flying up against Russian ships and aircraft, we get warning flares. We actually got shot at once when we got a bit too close to look at one of their radars. And I'm afraid to say this is the way it's going to be in future.
Because, of course, people listening to this and thinking, is this an escalation? Is this Russia flexing its muscles against NATO, wondering in terms of the Ukraine situation how far they can go? But this is pretty normal practice. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically trying to create a new normal where you can't go that close to a Russian ship. That's how it used to be. And you'd always test the boundaries to see how close you could get. In the end, what we used to do was do it at night with sort of night scopes and things like that, and they wouldn't see you. But the fact of life is, in future, this is going to be normal. Whenever you see NATO ships up against Russian ships, you're going to see some sort of interaction in the South China Sea. The Chinese will be at it trying to see Allied or American ships off the premises, and I suspect the same around Iran and North Korea as well. This is the way the world is now.
Just an overview very quickly from you, Chris. We love having you on the show. Thank you. We spend almost days... the thing I always think about Ukraine is it's almost become the norm, hasn't it? It's happening, and we'd stop talking about it. We talk about the Middle East, we talk about Gaza, we talk about these problems with the Houthis and the rebels and Hezbollah and Lebanon. We talk about Israel. I said this to Tobias Elwood last night, and I'd love to ask you the same question. A lot of people will contact shows like this and say, oh, this is over-egging it. And other people go, my God, we're on the precipice. What's your overview? I mean, you were, former NATO and Royal Navy commander, Rear Admiral. You're very lucid, you're very calm, aren't you? But the world, is it dangerous? Is it posturing? What's the reality, Chris?
Yeah, I got accused of being a pessimist yesterday, and I said, no, actually, I'm an optimist who worries a lot. And
I like that.
That's the way it is today. The fact of life is, we've discussed before, we've got two major blocs now. We've got these Eurasian autocrats, Russia, China, Iran and North Korea. We've got the free world trying to say, look, we don't want you to dominate Eurasia and the waters around it and exclude us. Now, we've already lost Afghanistan to that bloc. Ukraine is fighting for its independence to stay on the side of the free world. You've seen Iran trying to expand into the greater Middle East to assert itself. It's been knocked back, and so have its proxies by Israel. But we should be in no doubt there's an existential struggle going on right now, and there are low levels of phony warfare going on between the free world and this Eurasian autocratic bloc. And if they create a new normal, then they're going to obviously prevail in trade, in energy, in economic terms. I think we need to see that big picture. Now, the balance for all that is we're very strong in the free world. Where we are weak is we lack the political will to be able to threaten and use force. I'm afraid we don't have many statesmen who are able to do that anymore, and we're going to have to get back into the habit of doing what our forebears did, who experienced the Second World War, because we're up at that scale. If you join up all the conflicts today, Jeremy, you get an escalating series of crises that give us a world war, just as you had in the First and Second World Wars.
And just finally, Labour, the government, without wanting to get political for you, made a big thing during the election campaign about how 2.5 GDR our defences. I've read and seen some terrible things about the state of our defences, be it ships, be it tanks, be it weapons, and how appalling is this stuff being decommissioned. I think John Healey, the Labour Defence Secretary, 2 weeks ago talked about a 500 million deficit Can this country defend itself? I keep reading it can't.
It can't at the moment. No, not on its own. We have to rely on our allies, particularly the Americans, to help us to do that, particularly in terms of America being the arsenal of democracy against China, the arsenal of autocracy. But the fact of life is, if we want to take this seriously, let me give you a number. 5.2% of GDP is what we spent on defence during the Cold War as a country. And right now, you've got Russia spending a third of its public purse on defence. China spending the equivalent of what the Americans are, but of course they get much more value for money. So, you know, the planet is arming, and if we just play at it and pretend that we're doing it, then we're not going to prevail. We might not even be able to defend ourselves if these people go on the warpath. The basic trick, Jeremy, is to spend exactly the amount on defence that deters your opponents and promotes your interests. If you spend too much, people get hacked off and people don't get hospitals built and things like that. If you spend too little, you don't get to get choices about your future.
Really great to have you on. Seriously, Chris. Chris Parry, thank you so much indeed. Former Rear Admiral and NATO and Royal Navy Commander, talking about the situation in the world. Listen, there's